There are so many people working within the video game industry that actually hate gamers' guts, and over the past decade, we have heard non-stop about Gamergate. Whenever something goes wrong for the largest titles in the industry, like The Last of Us Part 2 and Concord and even Ghost of Yotei, they blame it on sexism, racism, bigotry, and the Gamergaters, and that exact thing is happening yet again. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, it's not shocking to see the Access media trying their best to defend something like Ghost of Yotei because it does support and ultimately promote the narratives that they are trying to push. The people behind this project are individuals that they personally agree with, and that is exactly why Laura Kate Dale here wrote this piece. Now, if you don't know who this individual is, oof. They are a video game journalist, author, and activist. She is known for writing about the transgender and autism communities in relation to video games and for her video game industry leaks. Many of her topics tackle accessibility for disabled players and LGBTQ plus representation. So this is somebody who has a personal stake in the video game industry's continuation of DEI practices. This is somebody who completely agrees that the video game industry has long been filled to the brim with white cis evil men and that things need to change. The image of the video game industry that normies see needs to be altered, and we need to change this space for what they deem is the better. But of course, in my opinion, I think that they just want to continue making money off of the video game industry because they're grifters and they don't actually care about good content and escapism. They simply want narratives they believe in pushed in our entertainment, and this individual, like the people behind Ghost of Yotei, are simply cultural Marxists. So it says, Ghost of Gamergate, a new video game sparked fury and accusations of wokeness in entertainment, but we've played this game before, and it's boring. If it's so boring, and you don't want to give people you deem as evil attention, why are you writing this article? That's right, because you only care about making money. You're not trying to see our side of the argument. You're not trying to hear us out. No, you just want to sit in your echo chamber and say, I of course am correct and you all are wrong. So it says, back in the summer of 2020, during the first year of the lockdowns, two first-party PlayStation games were released back-to-back, just a month apart. Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, Tsushima was an absolutely phenomenal game, one of the best games to release in a very long time, and The Last of Us Part 2 was a disaster. It made a mockery of The Last of Us 1. They disrespected fans. They didn't actually care about creating high-quality entertainment, and I will die on that hill. But of course, they say, upon release, Ghost of Tsushima was pretty beloved by a specific right-wing culture war gamer crowd who placed it on a pedestal specifically as a way to directly attack The Last of Us Part 2. It is a better game, plain and simple. But of course, now, if you like that game, oh, you're just a right-wing chud. While The Last of Us Part 2 is far from perfect, and they even go on to admit that Neil Cuckman took inspiration from real-world politics, specifically the Israel-Palestine conflict, the game's sin on release for many on the political right was that it took a series whose lead was previously a man and continued its story with one lead who was a lesbian and another whose appearance was deemed too masculine for these players to be attracted to her. It's not about being attracted to a character, it's about having a character who is well written, who makes sense to the story. And yes, I think that it is pretty ridiculous they killed off the one male lead in order to make way for girl bosses. I liked Ellie, don't get me wrong. I think that it would have been perfectly fine to keep her as a lead, but I think that it would have been smarter if they split their stories and Joel was doing one thing, she was doing another. But even so, you could have killed off Joel in a very respectful way. And I don't mean that, oh, the actual storyline had to be respectful, because sometimes bad things do happen to good characters in games, but it just felt like a slap in the face to say, you know what, this is your favorite character, and we are going to kill him off as soon as possible. We're not going to give you more time with him. We're going to market the game extremely heavily with him and make you believe that he's in it for the majority of the experience. And yeah, people took that personally. And when you decide to replace them with two girl bosses, right, that is going to be an issue for a lot of people. It says frequently allegations this character must be trans were used to suggest her appearance discredited her right to womanhood. She doesn't have a right to womanhood, she's a fictional character. Tsushima's tale of a male samurai's solitary quest for revenge was heralded as the epitome of what gaming could be. Fast forward to October 2025, and we see the release of its sequel, Yotei, set 300 years after Tsushima. Yotei follows the story of Atsu, and then they talk about how, even though at its core it's similar to Tsushima, and it offers more combat tools for players, but largely a mechanically similar adventure with what I'd argue is more of a personally engaging main character, of course, people don't like it. YouTube creators decried how woke politics ruined the game, while others took to X to decry its progressive agenda. They talk about Mark Kern and how he's discussed the situation and how evil he is, and how basically evil anybody not shutting up and consuming products is evil, which I think is so rich coming from someone like this, because these are the types of people who will boycott something like Hogwarts Legacy because they personally do not agree with decisions that were made, and that's fine. I would never tell somebody to buy a game if they feel passionately enough about boycotting it. You are 100% allowed to do that, but when it's on the other side, no, you're just a sexist, racist, bigot, toxic, incel, loser, chud if you don't buy their game, which is the problem. If you are allowed to boycott games, we are allowed to boycott games. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who are enjoying Yotei, and I'm really glad. I hope that you play it. I hope you get your money's worth. I absolutely hope you love it, but other people didn't want to support it, and there was a pile of problems with Yotei. First of all, they did replace Jin Sakai with Atsu. If they wanted a female lead, they could have just continued the Tsushima story and had Yuna be the lead, and then have Jin Sakai showing up occasionally, having him be integral to the story and what's going on. That could have been really, really cool. Maybe he's off protecting one section of the island while she's protecting another. You have a dual story, and then they come together at the end and maybe like the final 2 or 3 chapters, and then they defeat the baddies together. That could have been really, really cool. But you decided to fast forward it, replace him. You only reference him in like one section of that game, which is another problem. But then you have Erika Ishii, who is an activist. That's going to push a lot of people away. She's a self-proclaimed terrorist, given she has said that she is Antifa. You had developers mocking the assassination of a political figure just because they disagreed with some of his opinions and they disagreed with the side that he was on. Then, to top all of that off, you had the Sucker Punch co-founder coming out and saying, this really isn't part of our company culture, I think, and we're sort of not in agreement with this. And they believe that it's not okay, not being very direct and consistent and not releasing a professional statement. And then you, of course, have them not really capturing the essence of the original in a lot of the teasers and trailers. Sure, it looks very beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't feel exactly the same. It didn't evoke the same emotion. So all of those problems piled together led a lot of people to say, you know what, I'm going to wait until it goes on sale. And that should be perfectly fine. But instead, they go on to attack anybody who didn't like Dragon Age the Veilguard, because we don't want to, have to deal with pronoun options and top surgery scar toggles and modern day terminology like transgender and non-binary. Of course, if you do not support Ghost of Yotei, you are speaking out against someone who they say is outspokenly anti-fascist, and maybe that says something more about you than it does them. All of these absolutely just terrible things. They even actually bring up the Assassin's Creed game that we recently heard was canceled. Of course, take all of this information with a grain of salt, but apparently you were supposed to play as a black former slave fighting against the early formation of the KKK, and the game was canceled due to concerns over the political climate in the States, but also in part due to the vocal right-wing backlash against Yasuke. And of course, we are broken records at this point, trying to explain what the problems were with Yasuke. He actually was a half-decent character in the game. The issue is that, first of all, you're playing as a historical figure, so you're bound to be doing things that are historically inaccurate. You had them boasting about how it was a historically accurate game when that clearly wasn't the case. You have them deciding to put a female in the game to go with him, right? To be paired with him. No way, which by the way has almost the same exact story as Atsu because these people can't create anything new and unique and original. But it wasn't just that he was black. If you set an Assassin's Creed game in Africa, I would never sit here and say, I need to be able to play as a white guy or a white woman because that would be fucking absurd. But it's okay when you're playing as a black character in a game set in Japan to these people. It's hypocrisy, plain and simple. I didn't want to have to play as Yasuke because I wanted to play as a Japanese man, just like if there was an Assassin's Creed game set in Africa, I would want to play as a black man. I think that would be perfectly fine, but I think that it's just so funny that these people truly believe these companies like Ubisoft want to make content for them and love them so much, even though these companies refuse to make a game set in Africa and actually give us authentic African representation, but they Americanize all these characters, right? Oh, a black former slave in America. Oh, a black slave in Japan. Just give us a strong black lead. Set a game in the 1300s during the reign of Mansa Musa. That could be sick, but no, they won't. They don't give us what we want or what we would be perfectly fine with supporting. It says, though, video game executives are unfortunately listening to this vocal minority of right-wing voices and allowing them to make boardrooms shy away from progressive themes. Yeah, and the problem with this argument is that for years, you guys, in the words of Kim Belair, terrified these companies into making things more progressive. I know this individual isn't directly affiliated with Sweet Babying, but this is clearly the mindset these people have had in the industry for over a decade. At this point, I mean, look at what happened with Anita Sarkeesian. Laura Kate Dale here was a part of Gamergate 1, and they were one of the people who went to these companies and went on social media and said, you need to be more diverse or else you're going to pay the price. It says, though, that many of these ideas are barely progressive. It's hardly a dramatic move for a game to feature a female character who is older or doesn't fit specific beauty standards, but that's the point. No, we are perfectly fine with having female characters who are not gorgeous. Look at Brienne of Tarth, for example, in the show, in the book. People love that character, and she is ugly as sin. In the book, of course, they picked a prettier actress, but at the same time, we're talking about a character who is not traditionally beautiful, and I'm sure that there are a lot of men out there who think that she is a super well-written character, who love her and are perfectly fine with her, but you don't want to actually represent that opinion and actually have to argue against that opinion because you know that you would lose. They end this article by saying the issue of right-wing men attacking minority creatives and characters in video games has been going on for well over a decade at this point. I think it's so funny that, of course, they need to say right-wing men because if they start bringing women into this conversation, well, then they lose their footing that they believe they have much quicker. They don't bring up people like Lumi or Savvy or me because they know that it would make the argument that much harder for them to counter. So, yeah, of course, they are coming out and saying it's the ghost of Gamergate and the chuds are attacking this game unfairly, when really we are just talking about the things we dislike that surrounded this title. Some people decided not to purchase it, but guys, remember, it's totally fine when they boycott and don't support a game because they don't believe in the people behind it, but it's not okay when you do. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.